They didn't want to leave their jobs after the war ended. They liked being paid and rewarded for their efforts. So this is a huge change with women. With African Americans, it's even greater. All during the period in the South from 1900 to 1940, blacks are not allowed to vote. Their right to vote was legislated away from them in the late 1890s and 1900s. You have complete segregation, called Jim Crow, in which everyone has to ride in the back of the bus if they're black. You cannot sit downstairs in the theater. You have to sit in what's called the buzzard's roost, the balcony. You can't swear in the same Bible in the courthouse. You can't drink from the same water fountain. There's a colored and a white water fountain. You can't do anything. Above all, you can't get a decent job. The only kind of job you can do is be a servant, a maid, a cook, or a laborer, a custodian, and if you're really lucky, maybe become a minister inside the black community. But you can't do anything in the factory. You can't do anything that's going to pay you a decent wage. Well, World War II helps to change that too, because everyone has to go to work. More than 2 million blacks leave the South. They go north. They go west. The draft rate for blacks is higher than for whites, and well over 1 million blacks join the armed forces. Still segregated, still treated like dirt throughout the South, but having new experiences. Going to places like Australia, where, in fact, one of my colleagues here has done some good work on how positive the black experience was in Australia, because they met people who were willing to be accepting of them as they were. Certainly that was true in Hawaii, it was true in the Pacific, it was true all over Europe, it was true certainly in France. And that made a huge difference, because among other things what it did was to bring blacks home from that experience with the determination to make things change at home. So all during the war you have what's called the Double V campaign, victory at home as well as victory abroad. The major black civil rights group during that period, the NAACP, stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, grows from 50,000 to 500,000 in 5 years. That's a 1,000% increase. And you have a new civil rights mentality developing within the black community. And all those people who go north are allowed to vote. They can't vote in the South, they're allowed to vote in the North, and you have a new political commitment on the part of the Democratic Party, especially to black people. You also, for the only time in the 20th century, you have income redistribution in America, which is toward greater equality as opposed to greater inequality. The top 20% lose a share of the total national income. The bottom 20% gain a share. This is the only time in the whole 20th century that America has moved in that direction. Indeed, one of the things we'll be pointing out is that, in fact, in the last 15 years, it's gone totally haywire the other direction, with wealth aggregating at the top and moving away from the bottom. So the war really is the critical area. Well, one thing you want to say is, we can't afford to have a war to get us out of this particular recession. So that's not an option. So what do we do? How do we deal with that? Now, one of the things that happens after World War II, and I'll talk a little bit more about what happens with blacks and women, but one of the things that happens after World War II, as you all are much, much too aware of, and I am too, is the Cold War. The Cold War is the dominant centerpiece of American politics. It's the anchor of our politics. And when Harry Truman decides to send American forces and American economic aid to take over from the United Kingdom in Turkey and Greece in 1947, that leads to the Truman Doctrine. And the Truman Doctrine is being resisted in Congress. Why do we have to do this? And the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee was a Republican, and Martha Vandenberg says, Mr. President, you've got to scare the hell out of the American people. That's the only way you're going to get it. And so Truman goes and he says, we're really involved in the Holy War here. This is just not a matter of national self-interest between the United States and the Soviet Union. This is a matter of free people versus enslaved people. People who believe in democracy versus people who believe in tyranny. People who are God-fearing versus people who are atheists. No compromise there. We got to basically contain those people because they can't live in a world half slave and half free. The Cold War becomes the dominant paradigm of American politics from 1947 until 1990. But it's not just American foreign policy. The Cold War shapes American domestic policy because anyone who suggests anything which is to the left of the center, particularly with issues such as health insurance, is automatically dismissed as someone who is a communist sympathizer, a fifth columnist, someone who wants to have socialized medicine. So Truman, when he introduces a national health insurance bill in 1947, he's the second president to think about doing national health insurance, it goes nowhere because it is essentially just trying to copy the Soviet Union. And so it is completely dismissed out of hand. You don't, even child care centers, believe it or not, child care centers were being opposed in the United States in the post-World War II period because it was collectivizing the family and following the Soviet Union and taking children out of the home. This, I'm telling you the truth. I mean, I've done research on this. I've got quotations all over the place on this. So this was what this means is that the United States, unlike England, France, Germany, Scandinavia, and Australia, did not have a left on its political spectrum. The Democratic Party was a little bit to the left of center, but really focused on the center. The Republican Party was a little bit to the right of center, and sometimes far to the right, with people like Barry Goldwater, but it was basically also centrist. Now, what that means is that if you want social change, it ain't going to come from some political party, it ain't going to come from the government. Which brings us back to the whole issue of minorities and the whole issue of women and blacks. How then do we get change in civil rights? Civil rights ultimately are controlled by state laws, state regulations. Well, we do have a major change that takes place in 1954 when the Supreme Court decides that we have to get rid of segregation. It's unconstitutional. Segregated schools are illegal. And that's reversing a decision that was made 54 years earlier. And it's 58 years earlier. It's an extraordinarily important decision. But nothing happens after it. Black people are still being discriminated against. There's really no significant change. And so you have the aftermath of World War II is the growth of a grassroots democratic movement among African Americans in the country. Quick story about Montgomery, Alabama. You all probably heard about the Montgomery bus boycott, in which for 381 days no black person rode a bus in Montgomery, Alabama because Rosa Parks, famous name, Rosa Parks one day said she was too tired to get up and move to the back of the bus when the bus driver told her to because the white person wanted her seat. And she said, no, I'm just too tired. And then she was arrested. You had the bus boycott. Dr. King becomes the leader of the bus boycott, and you have a new era of civil rights. Well, it's not quite the whole story. The civil rights movement in Montgomery, Alabama revolved around the women and black women in Montgomery, Alabama, who formed a women's political council. They couldn't vote, but they formed a women's political council in 1947. And a black trade union, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters Union. And so you had people already mobilizing and planning for this kind of demonstration. And Rosa Parks was the secretary of the NAACP. She just wasn't a seamstress working downtown. She was the secretary of the NAACP. This was planned, folks. This was planned. And it was a grassroots plan. And basically what happened was she made it a success. They made it a success. The grassroots movement. They created Dr. King. He did not create them. In the aftermath of all that, you have more and more uprising on the part of young people, especially in the South. I've written a book about the four people who led the sit-in movement in Greensboro, North Carolina, who were sick and tired of going downtown and buying their school books and buying their toothpaste and then not being served lunch at the lunch counter. So they did that one day. They got their receipts from the other purchase, and they sat down at the lunch counter and said, we want a cup of coffee. No way, we don't serve colored people. They sat there, opened their books, and studied all day. They went back to campus. The next day there were 23. Next day after that there were 66. The day after that there were 100. And the day after that there were 1,000. And within 2 months, there were demonstrations just like that in 54 cities and 9 different southern states. And you had the student phase of the Civil Rights Revolution. Now, the Civil Rights Revolution does not necessarily make a difference right away in national power. John F. Kennedy sounds really good on these issues, but doesn't do very much because all the Senate committees are chaired by Southerners.